Some integer review for you here. We're going to start off with the problems that covered like the first 8 problems on the test that we just took on Unit 0. So let's begin thinking about all the different things that we have to consider when we're working on that part of the test. There's a few things in your way. One is the basic idea of dealing with negative numbers, right? The idea of the number line, right? That 0 is in the middle. We got 1, 2, 3, and that this number line goes on forever in both directions. Okay, so these first problems are really based on counting and to make sure that the double negatives don't mess you up. On top of that, we also have to deal with the order of operations. So we're using these two things, and mainly we're going to start off talking about parentheses. And so let's start dealing with parentheses. All right? The first thing that we know about an expression when we're evaluating it, okay, is that evaluate means to turn it into a value. So we want to just get one number that is equal to this expression. Well, the whole point of parentheses means that we want to start with what is inside the parentheses first. So anything that's inside parentheses must be calculated first. And then you can get rid of the parentheses. So now we have 3 minus 4. So if I was to start right here at 3, and then to consider what does it mean to do minus 4? All right, which thing would, minus makes us smaller, right? So plus would move me this way, and a minus would move me that way, okay? So it says minus 4, I'm going to move 4 steps to the left. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can see that that placed us at -1. Okay, so that means that 3 minus 4 is -1. Okay, so again, it's counting is really what's happening with these multiplications. With these problems. We want to make sure that we're counting before we multiply. So now that we have these two parentheses next to each other, this means to multiply. Whenever you have two parentheses next to each other with no symbol in between, sometimes there will be a dot there and sometimes it won't be there. Okay, but either way, you have to know that when two parentheses are next to each other, that indicates multiplication. Okay, so we have -6 right here is what we would get. Okay, a negative times a positive always makes a negative. So our first problem would be complete. And we could go move on to the next one. Okay, at some point during these problems, it would be a great idea for you to actually pause the video, work on it ahead of time, and then see what happens. You might be able to actually formulate a better question if you do that. So think about it, and then ask me a question if you can't answer it on your own by watching the review. All right, so here we go. We'll look at number 2. We'll put an equal sign here, and then we're going to copy the -1. Okay, this is the first procedure I'm trying to show you guys. We can copy everything that's there. Nothing has to change so far, right? So I copy the negative, the 1, and the negative. But now again, we're dealing with PEMDAS, so we're talking about what happens inside the parentheses. Okay, so I need to copy the parentheses, but now I need to put the answer of -2 plus 6. Okay, and as I've been showing the number line, if you need to refer to the number line, then do that. Okay, so we'll look here at the number line and we'll look at -2. And then we're going to add some more numbers here so that we can count. So if I start at -2, okay, we're trying to figure out what is -2 plus 6. So that means if I start at -2, I'm going to take 6 steps to the right, because plus will move us to the right. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that brings us to 4. So that means that -2 plus 6 is 4. Now what we need to realize is this is an operation. Okay, what we're going to do is subtraction. This says to do -1 minus 4. Okay, so what is -1 minus 4? Well, we could pick a different color if we wanted to, right? We could look at green. Okay, if I start at -1, right here at -1, and I go -4, that means I got to move to the left 4 times, right? So I'm going to count from -1 and go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and where would that put us? Well, this is -3 right here. That's -4. And this is -5. So we can see that -1 minus 4 is -5. So again, it's counting. So you have to not be careless about this. I think that's really what happened on the test. A lot of you guys were just a little careless. You have to be very careful. The opposite of careless, right? Be careful. Look at all of these steps. double check your work at the end, and make sure that you're counting correctly. All right, so we get to number 3. Why don't you pause the video and try this one on your own? So here we'll go. Hopefully you tried it already. So we're going to get the value that goes inside the parentheses. So again, 4 minus 6. What's 4 minus 6? Okay, I know not all of you might need to do this, but some of you need to do this, I think. Okay, so we see we're starting at 4, and I want to know what's 4 minus 6. Okay, we're going to get a negative number here because the negative number is bigger. Do you notice that? That the minus 6 is bigger, right? So if I take away more than I have, that's a problem. I mean, we usually learn that in the world, right? If you go to buy something at the store and you don't have enough money to buy it, then you can't buy it, okay? So I think we know what that means. We realize, oh, I still need some money, right? If I have $4, right? Let's say I have $4 to buy something, but the thing costs $6, right? Well, that means I still need $2, right? I still need $2 to get that, okay? So again, let's go look at what would happen, right? I would do 4 minus 6, and I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, and that takes me to negative 2. Therefore, 4 minus 6 is equal to negative 2. So this is counting, guys. I really can't do much more but showing you where you messed up your counting, okay? So a lot of your mistakes need to be either noticed by you or you need to ask me where you're going wrong on these problems, okay? So let's try number 4. As soon as I turn to it, why don't you just pause the video and do this one on your own. Okay, so now for number 4, we'll put an equal sign and then we'll go back and we'll think about the parentheses, the PEMDAS thing, right? The order of operations, okay? So the P stands for parentheses, but it really means to do whatever is inside the parentheses first. And honestly here, we don't have anything inside the parentheses other than the negative 3 and the negative 6. There's no operation to do. So we should instead look farther down the order of operations. Okay, we don't have any exponents, but we do have multiplication. Again, when you see two numbers next to each other like this, that means 3 times 2. Okay, so that means multiply. So negative 3 times negative 6, a negative times a negative makes a positive. So we get positive 18. Then 18 plus 3 would give me 21. So, again, we're just adding, regular addition. I won't explain, but when we're dealing with the negatives, I'll definitely draw the number sign and make sure that we're counting. Okay, so for number 4, you should have got 21. Okay, if you guys want a couple problems to practice right now and you're like, hold on, let me just write down a few. Okay, maybe you could do that right now. Write down, pause the video, write down some of these problems and try all of them. Okay, see what happens, and then we'll go back over the video, watch it, and see which ones you messed up on. If you do that, I'm telling you, you're going to have a question. And when you bring the question, I'll give you the answer, and then you'll learn. Okay, so please don't be afraid of learning, but instead, actually apply yourself, yeah? Put in some work, write down the questions. Don't expect to learn this just by listening to me, right? You got to actually put some work in and ask some real questions. Again, looking at PEMDAS, right? When we have something like this, there's no parentheses, okay? So what we learn is to do our math from left to right then, okay? So from left to right. So we'll start with 5 minus 4. Well, 5 minus 4 is 1, okay? So then we'll do 1 plus 6, and 1 plus 6 is 7. So this problem would be that simple. Again, it's just addition. So be careful with it. Make sure you're counting the right way. Okay, for number 6, we have negative 6 minus 5 plus negative 5 plus 1. So this is something we'll talk about for a second. So in this case, we want to write one thing that's different, okay? We're going to understand what does it mean to add a negative number. Okay, so minus 6. And then if I write plus negative 5, we want to know that that's the same thing as just minus 5. Okay, adding a negative number means to subtract. It just means take away. Okay, so a lot of times you'll see when we have two different signs, it's usually there's gonna be something negative. Okay, if I do a positive times a negative, I get a negative, right? Same thing if I add a negative number, I'm subtracting. So if we go from left to right, -6 minus 5, right? Well, where would I be at if I'm on the number line? If I'm at -6 and I gotta go -5, well that means I'm gonna go to the left 5 steps, right? And that would put me at -11. So then I have -11 plus 1, okay? But that would move me back the other way, right? Because plus needs to move back this way. So plus 1 would drop me right there at 10. And so -11 plus 1 is, -10. So now for number 7. This would be a great one to pause and try on your own. Okay, and I'll probably do a few of them a little quicker now so that we can get this video under time. So now, let's get 6 minus and then our blank parentheses, okay? Again, we always start with what's inside the parentheses. So -6 plus 1 gives me -5, right? If I'm at -6 and I take one step to the right, I'll be at -5. Well, now we got to be careful for what this means. It says to do 6 minus a negative, okay? So one idea I've seen some teachers do is that you can connect these two minus signs and realize that this makes a big plus symbol. Okay, so this really just means 6 plus 5. Okay, so minus a negative means to add. To subtract a negative, I repeat, means to add. Okay, but you have to see two actual negatives. Okay, so I want to see two negative signs, right? So again, I'm subtracting because of that one, and I'm not subtracting a positive number, but we're subtracting a negative number. So change the sign. So here we have another example where we have some parentheses to deal with. So start with the equal sign, and the first thing we'll do is start getting rid of parentheses when we can, okay? If a number is by itself in parentheses, then you can just get rid of it. Take it off, okay? There's nothing else left inside there. But now we have to deal with -6 minus 4. And so that is all inside of the parentheses. So let's use the number line so we don't mess that up, okay? We know 0 might be all the way over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so -6 is right here. And I have to take 4 steps to the left because it's -4. So if I do -6 minus 1, 2, 3, 4, that puts me at -10. Okay, so what does this mean? Does this mean to do 4 minus 10? Or does it mean to do 4 times 10? Okay, and whenever you see a number outside of a parentheses with no symbol right there, it means to multiply. And again, we have a negative times a negative. So that means that we're going to have a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive, and 4 times 10 is 40. So we probably wouldn't actually write positive 40, we would just write 40. I just wanted you guys to see that it was negative times a negative. That makes it positive. All right, we'll move on now. We're about halfway through the examples that I made for y'all for this video. So let's take a look at 9. Okay, in this case, you should have 5 minus parentheses. Okay, so that part we can copy. Notice this is us simplifying things. I'm trying to take the rest and then break it down to make it smaller. So 6 minus 5 is 1. So again, we do the thing in the parentheses first. Then we can get rid of the parentheses and just subtract. So 5 minus 1 is 4. All right, number 10 right here. So in this case, we have a double negative, right? We have 1 minus and then parentheses, okay? What we want to remember is that a double negative, right, is a positive. All right, minus -2 means +2. So again, we deal with what's inside the parentheses first. 6 plus 2 is 8. So this tells me to do 1 minus 8. Okay, and you do not want to tell me that this is 7. Because if I start at 1, and I take 8 steps to the left, because it's minus 8, so don't forget, minus is going to bring me this way. So I start at 1 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would be at negative 7. Okay, so you could count if you want to draw your whole number line. I'm just trying to spare you guys waiting for me to do all of this stuff. But you see my point, okay? Draw the number line on your paper and use it so that you can count. So let's take a look at 11. In this case, we have a lot of parentheses all over the place. And one of the main points I'm trying to make to you guys today is if you see a number by itself in parentheses, you can just get rid of it, but you have to remember what operation was happening, okay? So this is telling me to do 2 times, right, everything inside this parenthesis, right? So I could take the 2 off there, but I got to remember, I understand I'm multiplying now by whatever else is left. Okay, so again, when we see a letter outside or a number outside of parentheses, it means to multiply. So inside, though, we want to see that we have another 2 parentheses stuck next to each other, and so those also mean multiply. So a negative 2 times a negative 4 will give me a positive 8. Okay, negative times a negative makes a positive. And now that I do 2 times 8, that makes 16. So again, we want to try to formulate real questions. I want you guys to ask me something like, hey, how come a negative times a negative is a positive? Or why did we do this step before that? The last thing that I want is I don't get it as a question, right? It's not really a question, right? The purpose of a question is to get some information that matters to you. So that means you have to be paying attention and kind of analyzing what's going on so that you have a question that means something. All right, for 12, we'll put an equal sign here. And again, we're working from left to right. And we know we have a negative times a positive. So our answer will be negative, and it's negative 30. Okay, again, notice that because of the order of operations, we had to do the multiplication before any addition and subtraction. Subtraction is the last thing on the list. Subtraction and addition come last, okay? So go do all your multiplications first, or you'll end up with the wrong answer. Okay, so negative 30 minus 6, you see? We did the multiplication first, and now we'll subtract. And negative 30 minus 6 is negative 36. Okay, if I am at negative 30, I have to take 6 steps to the left, and so that would bring me to negative 36. Okay, so for this problem, we have a double negative again. So this is negative 2 minus 6, but minus negative 5. There's 2 of them. So we make that a plus. Okay, now we can kind of finish the rest of our math, okay? Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. Okay, again, if I'm at negative 2, right? This is 0, that's negative 1, that's negative 2. If I'm at negative 2, and I move 6 steps to the left, okay? I would be at negative 8. I would not be at positive 4 or something like that, okay? Make sure that you're counting the right direction, okay? So minus means to the left. So that's negative 8 plus 5. So now we're plus. So now we got to count back the other way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we see this would have us at negative 3, okay? And so that's what we get. It's negative 3 as our answer. All right. We got like 6 more problems left. So let's see an answer for you. Okay, you guys should check your work right now. For this problem, pause it and try it on your own. Okay, and if you're back, the answer should have been negative 29. Okay, you should have got 4 times negative 6. It's a positive times a negative, so you would have got negative 24. And negative 24 minus 5 is negative 29. All right, for 15, go ahead, try this problem on yourself. Okay. Okay, now for this problem, we should have got the 3 plus 4 is 7. So you do inside the parentheses 4 first. And then 7 times negative 6, well, that's a positive times a negative. So our answer will be negative, but it'll be negative 42. Let's go check out 16. All right, for 16, let's do this whole problem. Okay, this would be a great time for you guys to pause it while I'm still getting everything ready. Pause it. Try it on your own. See if you make a mistake and maybe we'll learn something. All right. I put it equals here. Now if I want, I don't have to get rid of the parentheses on the first time. I've been doing that every time, but it's just like a habit. I have to do what's inside the parentheses now though, right? So minus 1, minus 6, right? Negative 1 minus 6 is negative 7. Again, if I'm on the number line, all right, let's say that's 0 and this is negative 1, right? And I take 6 steps to the left because I'm going minus 6, then I'll be at negative 7. Okay, it's the only place that you could be. Okay, but we have two parentheses next to each other. So that means to multiply. And a negative times a negative is a positive, so we get positive 21. Okay, so let's try 17 this time. Again, we have another set of parentheses, so we want to start inside the parentheses first, okay? So inside we have negative 4 minus 5. You want to really fight the urge to say that this is 1, okay? And you got to start thinking with negative numbers like I've been saying it. If I spend $4, right, that's definitely not positive. That's a negative, man. You guys will see when you guys get a bank account, okay? If I spend $4, okay, and then I spend $5. How much did I spend? Okay, that means you spent $9, not that you spent $1. So think about it that way. Okay, negatives are things being taken away, whereas positives are things that you're getting, incoming, things that are going to go into your bank account, not come out. A negative times a negative is a positive, and so we get 9 times 3 is positive 27. Sorry, negative 9 times negative 3 is positive 27. Okay, so whether you multiply a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative, you still get a positive. The only times that we end up with a negative is if the two things we're multiplying have different signs, right? See another example here. We have negative 4 in a parentheses and a negative 3 in a parentheses. So we've been focusing on how when you have two things in parentheses like that, with nothing in between them, that means multiply. So 4 times 3, again, a negative times a negative is a positive. So we get positive 12, and positive 12 minus 1 makes 11. Alright, now let's look at the last two problems. Okay, 19. So go ahead, pause this one and try it on your own, and I'll put the answer up here. Okay, and hopefully you did that in your head, right? We got negative 2 in the parentheses times negative 5, right? So a negative times a negative makes a positive. And so we should have negative 2 times negative 5 makes positive 10. Now for number 20, we get this last one. 5 minus 4 equals 1. And 1 plus 4 makes 5, so this would be easy enough like that. Okay, the parentheses was definitely the hardest part for you guys, dealing with more negative numbers and everything. So I hope this review helped you kind of get some extra practice. What I will do is I will make another practice sheet. Okay, so I'm going to add another one. All right, I'll make another one of these and I'll go add this to Google Classroom. And I will add the answer key so that you guys can use this as extra practice. Okay, if you got to retake this test, there's no sense taking it if you don't know what you're doing. So again, watch this video to review integers, and I hope that you're ready to move on to the next section on substitution. Good luck studying.